What you're about to hear is a follow up to Chapter 2 of Certified Financial Planner Steve Smith's book, Power Up Your 401k, The Employee Trail to Retirement. So, Steve, Chapter 2 was all about setting financial goals, and this is such an essential conversation. I mean, this is kind of where everything begins whenever you're working with a new client, right? I would imagine what are your goals becomes one of the very early parts of the conversation.
It absolutely does, because if you don't know where you're trying to get to, it's really hard to figure out how to get there. I know that's intuitive, but sometimes it can be elusive. So when we start to talk about, the low-hanging fruit, most people would like to stop working at some point and retire. Others would like to buy a home one day. Maybe it's affording the opportunity to bless your children with going to university for 4 years, or the ability to be able to write that check. Maybe it's just some really fancy, fun dreams. A popular one is to buy a very expensive RV and travel. People go to work, raise kids, do all these things, and don't have time to really be off of work for an extended period of time that it would require, and just put that as one of their goals to achieve and work towards it. So it's really important to get the scope of what that person wants to strive for. And once I understand that and we can start to quantify, then we can really make some magic happen.
Well, speaking of goal setting and what to strive for, you focused a lot on this in the chapter. So I thought it would deserve a little bit of follow up here, because balance was a recurring theme, not just in finances, but in life as well, of course. And I'm just curious if you have any personal stories or ways in which you balance kind of those long-term financial goals that you have with enjoying life in the present. I enjoyed your story about how hard you worked when you were younger, and you wish you'd spent a lot of that money on saving in the stock market instead of just buying a car, motorcycle, and other fun toys, gadgets, and things like that. So how do you balance that now as you're older between having a little fun in life and also with sort of keeping those long-term goals in mind?
Well, in life, we have risk and rewards. And it's probably one of the more difficult lessons that all of us have to learn, because it's like you get a new spring in your step when you get a new car.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're into a motorcycle, a Harley Davidson, and it's exhilarating to take those steps and earn those things. Or maybe it's a new bicycle, like it would be for me. But not achieving those big box goals is very difficult. And I've seen the presentation, the one I saw, I don't know if it's true to him, but Stephen Covey, he gives the example when you put all the little stuff in first into the jar, and then you try to put the big rocks in.
Oh, yeah.
Guess what? They don't fit. And this conversation, to give it maybe a little more structure, is to make sure that we look at what are the big rocks that are the have-tos in your life, which is maybe retirement. If it's education for you, maybe it is that RV, just to stick with the same examples. And then we fill in all the other stuff, the new cars and the 7-day cruise and all those other stuff. We start to fill in. Maybe it's some new clothes. Maybe it's helping out another family that's in need. There's so many things, but we start to fill that in. But when we start with our big rocks, we know we're going to be okay and strive for those. And then we can work with what's left, rather than think of it as, oh, I got all this money and I can spend it however I want. And then we get stuck. So that's kind of how I process that with clients, if that's an analogy to make it a little clearer.
Perfect visual and analogy. Absolutely. The chapter touches on the role of emotion, and that plays right into that striking balance, of course. But the role of emotion specifically in making financial decisions, fear and greed are the ones anybody who's in the market or saving for retirement or thinking about utilizing dollars in their life. I mean, those are going to be the things that drive us to really decision points. And so I'm curious if you've got any specific strategies that you give people to kind of help them navigate that, to become more objective when making decisions about their investments, but also being realistic that we can't just cut off fear and greed from our brains.
I give them, it's more of a strategy. It's a little bit, it's not exactly, do this one, two, three, four, but I tell all of them that we're planned for the long term and we're going to have this turbulence along the way. So when you feel that fear, reach out and we'll have a conversation and we'll attack that fear, which might be subjective. There might even be a little bit objective to that, but then we process that and apply that to historical records so we can gain a perspective and help them lower that fear factor. And it's really about that trust in relationship to make sure we stay on track so we don't panic out to cash and make that permanent loss. It's that confidence and knowing your client coming together to really help them understand that what we chose for them was the right thing. We need to stick with it, not get too aggressive or too conservative because of circumstances going on around us.
I found this interesting about your book. Here we are just in the second chapter, and you're already talking about sort of that mentality of turning around, reaching back, and helping the next generation move forward. And I realize it's because this was a chapter about setting financial goals. But I can imagine a lot of financial advisors out there, they're going to want to make sure the client gets taken care of first. And then I could see that being the last chapter of the book. Like, okay, here's some tips to tell your family members or to bring somebody else along for the ride. You chose to
Right.
put this very early on in the book, and I think it might speak a little bit to just your mentality and your approach to life of just making this a very holistic thing. Finances and planning and retirement, it's not just an individual conversation. You've mentioned family and the importance of that and community multiple times already in the book, and it seems like a great example where you're trying to already inspire folks to help others around them with financial literacy or helping them establish an account early on in life or just passing on lessons in any way that you possibly can. Whatever your capacity is to help the next generation, you're given the two thumbs up to go for that.
It's one of the greatest things in life to be able to give someone a hand up. I'm not a big fan of the hand out, but a hand up. And if you live your life from generosity, and I'm not talking about the size of the gift or the size of the help or the investment in your children or whatever organizations that you're part of. But one of my mentors explained it like this. If you take your fist and go like this, everybody knows what that means. Even my black lab, if I go like this to my black lab, guess what they do? They go down, right? But if you live your life holding on to your stuff and don't think about anybody else but yourself, you will repel a lot of people around you. But if you live your life with an open hand where things can come in and things can go out freely, now you'll have a much fuller life.
I like that.
We need to stay focused on our big rocks and our goals, but with some of those other little rocks in that previous example, we need to make sure that some come in and some go out. And that just makes for a more fulfilled life.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Let's focus on this for our final wrap up of chapter 2 here. You talk about the importance of big picture thinking in financial planning, of course. And I'm curious if you have any exercise or tips or maybe just questions that somebody could ponder. If I'm someone who struggles to see that big picture, maybe I'm just more of an in the moment kind of person, and I struggle to see that line 10, 20, 30 years down the road. What are some exercises or things we can do to clarify what our own big picture might look like?
I could go a lot of different places with that, but I'm going to stick with, since we had a block so far in the book about children, teenagers.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I love to do is go into the local high schools and teach if they're in like a business type class or economics or something of that nature, and really just help them understand time value of money and debt. And I get them interested in how to calculate that time value of money. And if I tell them, most of them are maybe 16, 17, 18 years old in these classes. And I ask, does anybody have a part-time job? And they say, yes. How much did you make? Oh, I made $6,000 this last year. And I said, if you invested half of that into an after-tax Roth IRA, they're not paying hardly any taxes. already because they're just starting out in life, right? So you put that in, and I say, how much do you think that's going to be in 20 years, 30, 40, 50 years? Just gets them into their 60s, right? And I actually do that calculate. They can do it right on their little app that they have on their iPad, or I do it on my phone, and just to tell them how much this grows. And we can even show them the inflation adjusted number. And it really just blows their mind, the opportunity that they have sitting right in those desks with simple mowing lawns, lifeguarding, grocery store, whatever it is that they do, they can really affect their life in a very meaningful, big way. And that I just love it, helping all those students really change the way they think and feel about money at that age when they're moldable. That's one of the ways that I try to influence different outcomes.
Well, thank you for your recap, Steve, of Chapter 2 of your book. Looking forward to seeing what's in Chapter 3. Again, this was just one chapter of Steve's book, Power Up Your 401k. If you would like to read the entire thing, obviously you can listen to it or even watch it if you're following along on YouTube or on a podcasting app. You can listen to the whole thing, or you can find all of those resources or get the hard copy of it, if you will, by going to powerupyour401k.com. Not only is the book there, but other helpful guides and resources. But go read the rest of the book so you can get great information about finances, preparing for the future, and more. It's at powerupyour401k.com. We've got links in the description of today's show to help you find your way, so check that out as well. This has been Power Your Retirement with Steve Smit, and we'll see you next time. This podcast is provided by Powerhouse Financial Advisors, an independent firm with advisory services offered through Parsonex Advisory Services, Inc., PAS, a federally registered investment advisor. The information provided is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered as personalized investment advice. PAS does not guarantee the accuracy, completeness, or suitability of this information for your specific circumstances. Investment decisions should be based on an individual's goals, time horizon, and risk tolerance. Past performance is not indicative of future results, and all investments carry a degree of risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any case studies, testimonials, or endorsements shared in this podcast are illustrative of individual experiences and may not be representative of the experience of all clients. They do not guarantee future performance or success. You should not infer any level of assurance regarding future financial outcomes. Listeners should consult with a qualified financial, tax, or legal professional before making any investment decisions. Parsonex Advisory Services, Inc. does not provide tax or legal advice. Be sure to consult with your tax and legal professionals regarding your specific circumstances. For a copy of our Form ADV Part 2A, which provides additional information about PAS, including our advisory fees and services, please visit powerhousefinancialadvisors.com.